here's Russell Brand talking about his latest appearance on Tucker Carlson's show, the daytime one.
Russell Brand, an employee, we should say, of Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation number 6, also known as Rumble.
Who owns Rumble? Who's invested in that? Do we know?
A bunch of people. Bunch of Silicon Valley freaks. Like, is Teal one of them? I'm not sure, but like those sorts of guys.
Okay. But, I mean, there are often corporations probably invested in Rumble. Rumble is a corporation in and of itself. Could that qualify as corporate media?
It's a publicly traded stock. Yeah, it's definitely it's as I said, Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation number 6.
Well, yeah, I'm just pointing that out. Joe Rogan works for a corporation called Spotify. Tucker Carlson works for a major corporation called News Corp, which owns Fox News, and he has now been publicly shamed, rightfully so, and it's been revealed through the Dominion discovery that he was worried about the stock price for his corporate media company. So with all of that
Teal
said,
and Vance are indeed Rumble.
Okay, I just wanted to. I couldn't remember which one. So yes, the Peter Thiel investment vehicle.
Because they love free speech.
All of this is a prelude to say, Russell Brand is really against corporate media. But here he is speaking about Tucker Carlson and his program, who just platformed him, and says, Tucker Carlson's homeless person position, not so bad.
Yeah. And I want to preface this with saying, like, Russell's talking about how good it is that he got onto Tucker to talk about the ideals we all share on the left. And like I'll just say his elaboration of those ideas are mainly like personal autonomy, and you should be able to control your own community, which sounds nice, I think, maybe to like a British hippie, but to Americans sounds a little bit neo-Confederate. But I'll just say we can play this here. As I think he wants credit for challenging Tucker on this homelessness thing, and instead he just does his laundry.
Say that kind of stuff on a mainstream channel is helpful and advances the conversation, and is generally, I would say, conciliatory in tone. Elsewhere in the chat, I explicitly say that I believe people should be able to identify however they want, express themselves however they want, as long as they don't hurt anyone else, obvious kind of stuff like that. And I specifically spoke to Tucker around the issue of homelessness. The only thing that I've ever seen, sir, that I would call you up on is when I've seen you talking about homelessness, and I feel that when talking about the subject of destitution and people that live in poverty, that the basis for that conversation should be love, and also for all of the displaced people in the world, that the foundational principle should be love. I'm not claiming that I'm able to maintain that line when something offends me for some cultural or personal reason, but I know that this is what I aspire to.
I agree with that, and I feel that drug addicts living outside are used as political pawns to destabilize society. I feel like they're not treated on purpose. The mentally ill live outside and die outside, and are left to do that because it's useful for the people in power to draw attention away from their own misdeeds. And I'm angry about it, but I'm not angry at the fentanyl addict. I'm angry at the industry that's grown up around him that doesn't treat any of his needs, that leaves him to die alone, and that becomes rich doing so. And that the politicians who posture about his death when they could have prevented it. And unfortunately, I get so overheated, I get so pissed that in many cases I have allowed myself to sound like I'm mad at the junkie when I'm certainly not. As a sober person, I have deep empathy for anyone who's lost an addiction, particularly on the street.
Can you pause for a sec? I'm so sorry. You are a drug addict, Tucker Carlson said. Get a job or leave. Pull up your pants and get the hell out of here. Go somewhere with lower standards. Head for a place where politicians don't care about their people, because we do care, and that's why we're hauling your tent to a landfill and cutting off your checks today. That's what he said in January of 2022 on his program. Carlson took aims at cities for funding homeless outreach, including overdose prevention centers in New York, which in fact means helping the homeless get high. He snapped. Okay.
I also love how he's like very much like, you know what? I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit too harsh on those dirty drug addicts that I talk about sometimes. And it's not that I hate it's not that I hate it's not that I hate the vagrant. It's not that I hate the toothless junkie, but I actually have a deep respect for that.
We got to play Russell's
I'm sorry, but just Tucker in particular, I had to put that in there.
Myself to sound like I'm mad at the junkie when I'm certainly not. As a sober person, I have deep empathy for for anyone who's lost an addiction, particularly on the street.
So there we go. Tucker Carlson, who on a personal level was extremely kind and beautiful to me, and I think he's a good person.
Wow.
And I don't believe that he is a
Big dumbass
negative
energy.
influence in American cultural life. I believe that you have to accept that people have different perspectives on cultural issues, and if you don't, the alternative is some form of tyranny, and hopefully it's the form of tyranny that you happen to agree with. And I don't think that's the answer, because it's a big old world out.
Everything. One form of tyranny is on one side, the other's on the other. Who can say it's fascism or, the government being expansive and providing services for people?
I want to go over, this is why like a Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation made a good investment in Russell Brand and Steven Crowder, like those people, because this sort of populist obfuscation of the real problem. Homelessness is not a failure of capitalism in the real estate industry. It is a failure of one party. And and you should vote for the Republicans, basically, is the implicit message if you want to solve that. And I just say, like, that is absurd.
One thing that strikes me about like celebrities with huge platforms, and even just like people who write for like various publications online, and you'll see it a lot, is that, and this goes back to what you were saying about Republican politicians often being like more evil and craven than like even their most evil and craven like base. Like people who have platforms like Russell Brand are oftentimes way more willing to believe in accept that everyone else is being unfair to somebody else with a big platform. Everyone else is being overly critical of someone else with a big platform. Everyone else is misrepresenting or misunderstanding what that person is saying, because they like to instinctually, because of class solidarity, or rather social position solidarity, because they have the same kind of job, put themselves in the position of that person. And it's always to our detriment when they like launder these types of terrible actors back into like the range of reasonability. Oh, they were nice to me and you like me, so if they're nice to me, doesn't that make them good people on a personal level? It's like, no, it doesn't really matter, because they're like definitely bad people on a professional and like political level. But it oftentimes also ends up to their own detriment, because in a lot of these cases, whether it's like a Twitch streamer or like a writer, like putting their neck out for people they've been told are like really bad and really problematic for like years, it comes to bite them in the ass. And then all they can do is go like a year from now, so when I said Tucker was a good person, turns out I was wrong. Everyone else was right, but you can't expect me to listen. Honestly, come on now, corporate hippie type. You can't expect me to, when people say this person's bad, millions of people, but they don't understand. I need to experience that for myself. I need to experience it.
But it's amazing. That was amazing.
And then they get mad that everyone's like, oh, you should have known, obviously.
But it's got to be more deliberate than that, and more than just like he was nice to me, because he was making this very similar case on Bill Maher, which is that Fox News and MSNBC are the same. Even though we have because they're both corporate media, that's true, right? Like you can have a criticism of them both as corporate media, but then there's a separate criticism of Fox News as like a deliberately an outfit that's deliberately lying to its audience and knows it, and we know that from Dominion. So it's not. Both sides are their own version of tyranny, and you have to decide like what kind of tyranny is right for you. Like it has to be you're flattening the discourse, and we've seen this time and time again. That is a way that benefits the right almost every single time.
And also, that's a professional argument from somebody who like operates on corporate platforms to go like, yes, if you want to be a pundit, you can either write for the New York Times, or you can write for the Washington Journal, or you can write for any number of these big magazines and have to deal with the fact that institutionally they're evil. And that's just, pick your poison, or you can not be in that industry in any meaningful way. And so when you're already in that industry, it seems like a very reasonable thing to be like, oh, every platform's the same, a boss, a CEO, someone who wants to tell you what to do. And it's like, but from the outside, from people who don't have that kind of like professional ambition, it's just like you can't see the difference between like MSNBC and Fox News. It's like certainly they have various things the same. They're part of a larger system, but clearly one is worse unless you're just looking for a job.
But yeah, and also he's bullshitting when he says like they're the same. One, he goes on and has a friendly chat with Tucker Carlson, says like actually he's a really nice guy and we agree on a lot. And the other, he goes on and like challenges Joe Scarborough, and I like going on MSNBC and challenging Joe Scarborough. But if they're both the same, you would have gone on and said, oh Joe, you're actually really nice to me and we actually agree on a lot of things. Look at us having cross aisle conversations. But he's not. He's an asset for Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation number 6, and it's a real shame because I liked Russell Brand going back to BBC Radio 6.
Liked his
BBC Radio
podcast,
2,
saw him live,
Audio
loved his
Boom.
politics. I thought I loved his politics, except for like I'm not going to vote. But
I mean, but he came around on that, and
Yeah.
he ultimately found like even though there is limitations within the Labour Party, it's better than the Tories. And also, he's done previously work in support of the NHS, which is being hollowed out. And I'll just say, like, if you watch his talk with Stephen Crowder, who's emerged from his hole, he has a big long talk about how the authoritarian tyranny and centralized control, and then he lets Stephen Crowder go on this jaunt about how government is really bad, and like, doesn't Obamacare prove it? And not even remotely do you feel like Russell Brand's going to like stand up for the NHS, because that shit is behind him now. He's now an
COVID
asset
broke
for
his
Cantor
brain.
Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation number 6, just like everybody else on Rumble.
Right.
Yep.
It took. Like I said, it took me a second to realize what you were saying when you said, if you listen to his talk with Stephen Crowder, who emerged from his hole.
yeah,
But I got it. I caught up. No, yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous to see someone like Russell Brand go this route, but it's not surprising. We're seeing this with so many of these guys now. They find that the money is right and the grift is too good on the other side. That combined with a number of them truly had their brains broken by the pandemic. Like it totally, like, I don't know if they got COVID and COVID actually did neurological damage like we're now understanding COVID can do, or if their brains just literally broke from the idea of there being a pandemic. And just a few weeks for someone like Russell Brand to hang out on a yacht was just too much for him to handle. But yeah, this is just like the new way going forward for so many of these guys. And I don't think there's going to be that retrospective from someone like Russell Brand, honestly. I think this is who he is now going forward till the day he hangs up his boots, honestly.
yeah.
It's a real shame.